entire well-being is contingent upon the remnant of this family working. But she says to her daughters-in-law, go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you. Naomi chooses a constructive response to her grief and loss. She does not leech off of her daughters-in-law. She does not manipulate them into taking care of her or guilt them for making their own choices. She does not gaslight them with nostalgic reminders of all she's done for them, but she makes her own decision to let them go. It would have been easier for her to rely on them for ongoing help, but perhaps she knew that that would only benefit her and not benefit them. Naomi chose to construct a new life for herself and allowed her daughters-in-law to do the same. This is how you know you're building the resilience muscle. When you are not demanding that other people do the work that you should do for yourself.
All right. Yeah.
This is how you know you're building the resilience muscle. That even though you are stuck in your own situation of struggle and difficulty, you do not make your problems other people's problems. I was shocked by Naomi's courage to tell her daughters-in-law to go back to their mother's home, to build a life for themselves, to find possibility in their own futures, to not enmesh and intertwine their futures into hers. I was struck by the amount of autonomy she allowed them to use in their own lives. Sometimes church people are so guilty of guilting other people.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Into doing what we think they should do.
Yeah.
Well, if it was me. But it's not you.
Sure ain't.
What Naomi chooses to do is she chooses to take responsibility for her own life and to allow her daughters-in-law to take responsibilities for theirs. Because the reality is if her daughters-in-law only do what she allows them to do, then it becomes fully her responsibility for their success. And Naomi says, listen, I want you to go back, return to your people, go back. She chose a constructive way to manage her grief and loss. And I'm here to tell you, grief is a powerful thing.
It sure is.
Grief has a way of sucking the life out of you.
Yep.
Grief has a way of drilling a hole into one moment and trapping us in that one moment because it's too painful to move forward without the one we love.
Yeah.
Grief is a powerful thing. We don't only grieve people, we also grieve the loss of opportunity.
Right. That's right.
There are many people who have never lost a spouse, never lost a parent, never lost a loved one, but have lost so much in the way of opportunity, who misstepped and who grieved what could have been, who grieved what should have been. Grief is a powerful emotion. And the reality is that so many of us operate out of dysfunctional grief. Grief that has turned into a toxic way of engaging others instead of creating a constructive way of navigating the reality of grief and loss in our own lives. We acknowledge we've lost something. We acknowledge that something has changed. We acknowledge that we will never be the person we were, but we have the opportunity to move forward in faith and move forward in victory
and dignity
with God. Naomi does something so courageous. She chooses to construct a new life for herself and allow her daughters and But then her daughters-in-law said, no, Naomi, we will return with you to your people. Naomi's like, no, don't do it. They're like, we will not leave you. Sometimes we trauma bond with others. Sometimes we trauma bond with others. Grief, assault, abuse. We are able to navigate these tight and tough spaces when we have community to journey with. And there are ways that journeying with others through the grief experience can lead us into new possibilities. There are also ways we trauma bond. And it maligns into a toxic, malformed codependence, where instead of moving forward, we trauma bond and we give each other permission to be dysfunctional and self-sabotaging. And we become enablers because we trauma bond. Now, the Bible doesn't say that the daughters-in-law and Naomi are trauma bonding, but many of us have done it. We build a connection and a relationship with somebody who has gone through what we've gone through, and initially it's comforting. Initially it's encouraging. Initially it is a place of relief. But after a while, if we are not both moving forward in our grief, it will allow us to trauma bond into a toxic and undermining, self-sabotaging situation. Resilience grows when we exercise the muscle of constructive response to trouble. It's responding with a sense of productivity, navigating through our new realities. And Naomi is like, listen, you cannot stay with me. Even if I were to get married today and have kids today, are you going to spend your whole life waiting until they grow up? Some of us would. Some of us are so incapacitated by what was that we refuse to move forward because the idea of what was is so refreshing. Naomi is like, don't do that to yourself. I know my sons were good to you. I know that you loved them for 10 good years, but do not hold on. Let go. Go home to your own people. Move forward in your grief and loss. Build your resilience muscle. Find a constructive way to navigate through this experience. Naomi didn't make her problems her daughters-in-law problems, because they had problems of their own. They had to deal with their own grief. They had to deal with their own loss. They had to deal with the realities that here they are. They had promises of families with Marlon and Killian, and now they have to move forward without the families they thought they would have. And they wanted to hold on to Naomi. But Naomi said, I can only take responsibility for me. And I need you to make decisions for yourself. What Naomi did was Naomi allowed her daughters-in-law to make their own decisions, because resilience is not about robbing people of their choices. It's about making peace with what God is doing in our own lives and what God is doing in others. Resilience is a constructive response to setbacks, challenges, and difficulties. I was intrigued that the biblical writer began the story of Ruth with such tremendous loss. It was loss after loss, generational loss. pandemic. But that was not the end of our losses. There are some in this congregation who are listening online, who are laying loved ones to rest, who are saying farewell to businesses, who are walking away from dreams that you have nurtured across years. And maybe you feel like Naomi, feeling like everything you built up is now gone. Everything that you thought you had has now been taken away. I want you to know that even in the midst of your loss, even in the midst of your pain, even in the midst of your distress, God sees you.
Yes, he does.
How do I know? The Bible says, then the daughters-in-law wept aloud. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Every relationship has a season. Sometimes it's a short season, other times it's a long season. And we may influence those who leave, but we cannot control those who stay.